My sister invited all her church friends to my graduation dinner, then told them I slept my way through college. "She's just good at playing innocent," she whispered. I stood up, toasted to my 4.0 GPA, and thanked God loudly. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. We weren't poor, but we weren't exactly rich either. My parents worked hard to make sure Ruth, my older sister, and I had everything we needed, but the most important thing to them was maintaining a good reputation in our tight-knit community. You couldn't show any cracks. You couldn't show weakness. And, well, I think that's why I always felt like I was living in Ruth's shadow. Ruth was everything they wanted. Smart, pretty, friendly, everyone loved her. She was the daughter my parents could brag about at church, the one who volunteered at every event, got perfect grades, and made everyone believe she was the picture of innocence. And I was the opposite. I was rebellious, did what I wanted, and preferred to keep to myself. I didn't hate my sister, but I resented how everything in our family seemed to revolve around her, and I hated that my every move was judged by her standards. When I got accepted to Georgetown University, it felt like a huge win. For once, I could leave the town, escape Ruth's shadow, and make something of myself. I worked harder than I ever had, not just because I wanted to prove to others that I could succeed, but because I needed to prove it to myself. And I did. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA. Not just a good GPA, but the highest I could get. Every paper, every exam, I gave it my all. I had earned this moment. That's when the dinner happened. Ruth texted me out of the blue a few weeks before graduation. "I'm organizing a dinner for your graduation. The whole family's invited, and I'd love for you to join us. I've already spoken to a few people at church, and they're all excited to come." I didn't want to go. I'd been keeping my distance from Ruth for a while. I was tired of her need to control everything and everyone around her. But, despite my hesitation, I agreed to show up. I couldn't exactly turn down a dinner in my honor, even if it wasn't really about me. I should have known that this wouldn't be a simple family gathering. Ruth had a knack for making everything about her in one way or another. The dinner was at our childhood home. I pulled into the driveway, feeling that familiar sense of dread rise in my chest. Ruth was already at the door, welcoming everyone in with her usual bright, almost nauseating smile. She had all of her church friends there, people I barely knew but had heard her brag about for years. I had tried to keep my expectations low, but walking in, I felt that familiar sting of judgment. The smell of home-cooked food filled the air, but the moment I stepped into the room, it felt suffocating. Ruth was sitting in the center of it all, directing traffic like the social queen she thought she was. My mom was sitting quietly off to the side, looking content, as always. And then, Ruth did what I didn't expect. She called me up to give a speech. "Sarah, sweetheart, why don't you tell everyone about your journey through college? We're all so proud of you," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, that familiar fake cheeriness in her tone. I was already irritated, but I couldn't back out now. I got up from the table and slowly walked to the front, clutching my glass of water, trying to steady myself. The eyes of the room were on me, some warm, some distant, but all waiting for me to speak. "Thanks, everyone, for being here," I started. "I'm really grateful for this moment. It hasn't been easy, but I did it. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA from Georgetown. It's been a long road, and I couldn't have done it without a lot of hard work and some luck along the way." I smiled, trying to make it light. But then, as I spoke, something happened. I heard Ruth's voice, low but loud enough for me to hear clearly. "She's just good at playing innocent," Ruth whispered, but not quietly enough. "You know, she slept her way through college." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my heart drop, my throat closing. I couldn't believe it. My own sister, the one who was supposed to have my back, had just thrown me under the bus in front of a room full of people. She made it sound like I hadn't earned a single thing. Like all my hard work, my late nights, and sacrifices meant nothing. She made it sound like I didn't deserve any of this. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. I could feel my face burning, the sting of humiliation sharp on my skin. But instead of breaking down, I did something I hadn't expected myself to do. I lifted my glass, my voice steady, and said, to my 4.0 GPA. To all the late nights and all the hard work. I want to thank God for helping me make it here, and for giving me the strength to do this the right way. No shortcuts. I raised my glass higher, my eyes catching Ruth's. Her face had gone pale, her smile faltering. The room was completely still. No one knew what to say, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her control this moment. Not this time. Ruth looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just stood there, looking stunned. She didn't apologize, didn't try to make it right, but I could see the anger and the frustration flicker across her face. The dinner dragged on after that. People tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, but I could feel the tension thick in the air. Ruth avoided me for the rest of the night, while I quietly tried to keep to myself, nursing my drink and wondering if I'd just made a huge mistake standing up to her. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. As the night wound down, I couldn't help but replay the moment in my mind. Ruth had done what she always did, tried to control the narrative. She was the one who always had the perfect story, the perfect life. And I was the one who had to constantly prove myself, not just to others but to her, too. I knew there was no going back from this. Ruth had made her position clear, and now I had to decide what to do with it. As the evening wore on, the awkwardness of the situation settled over everything. People tried to talk to me, but their words felt distant, like they weren't really seeing me, just some character in a script they were too scared to rewrite. Ruth was still in the corner, chatting with a few of her friends from church, putting on that perfect smile that everyone was used to. It was almost as if she didn't even realize the damage she had done. Or maybe, she just didn't care. After about an hour of small talk and strained politeness, I excused myself to the bathroom. I needed a moment to collect myself, to breathe. The anger that had boiled in my chest earlier was starting to settle into a heavy sadness. Ruth had always been the golden child, the one everyone looked up to. It wasn't just that she was the good daughter, she was the daughter everyone else thought I should be. And in that moment, I felt like all the years I had spent carving my own path had been reduced to nothing more than a rumor. A lie that she could tell, just to make herself feel superior. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My reflection looked just as calm as it had before, but inside, my stomach churned. How could she do this to me? We were sisters, for God's sake. We were supposed to be on each other's team, not tearing each other down. Was this what it had come to? As I stood there, taking deep breaths, I felt a sense of clarity. I had been walking on eggshells around Ruth for years, doing everything I could to avoid conflict. But tonight, I had finally spoken up. Sure, it wasn't the way I'd hoped to handle it. I would have preferred to have a real conversation with her about what had happened. But in that moment, standing up to her felt necessary. It wasn't about being dramatic. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing everyone in that room, especially her, that I wasn't going to be silenced anymore. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much Ruth's behavior had affected me over the years. It wasn't just the comments at dinner. It was all the little things. The way she would always try to one-up me, the way she would subtly undermine my accomplishments or make me feel like I wasn't living up to the standards she set. The comparisons that my parents and everyone else made between us. I had always been the second choice, the afterthought. Ruth was the perfect one. I was just there. When I walked back to the dining room, I saw Ruth in the middle of another conversation, laughing and acting like nothing had happened. It made me sick. But I wasn't about to let her act like she was the victim. She had started this. Now, she was going to have to live with the consequences. I walked past her without saying anything, and I could feel her gaze follow me. But I didn't look back. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me shaken. I sat down at the table, grabbed my purse, and started putting my things together to leave. It felt like everyone in the room was watching me, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to stay for the charade. "Sarah, where are you going?" my mom called from across the room. I turned to face her. Her eyes were full of concern, but there was something else there, too. A quiet disappointment that I wasn't willing to stick around and keep up the act. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I don't need to stay here. I'm done." Ruth shot me a look, but I could see the irritation behind her smile. She wasn't going to get the last word. Not this time. "Sarah, it's just a misunderstanding." "You're overreacting," she called out as I reached the door. But I didn't respond. I just walked out of the house, my feet heavy with every step. The cool night air hit my face as I got into my car, and for a moment, I let myself feel the weight of everything that had just happened. I felt like I was finally making the right decision, but I wasn't sure what that meant for the future of my relationship with Ruth. The drive back to my apartment was long and quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. My thoughts kept circling back to the dinner, to Ruth's words, to the look on her face when I stood up and called her out. Part of me wanted to feel guilty. Maybe I should have confronted her more directly, or maybe I could have waited for a better time. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had done what I needed to do. I wasn't just going to sit there and let her tear me down in front of everyone. I had earned that moment. I had earned my success, and I wasn't going to let her steal it from me. When I finally got home, I sat down on my couch, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed a few times, and I saw a text from Ruth. "Sarah, can we talk? I'm sorry if I upset you tonight. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we please clear the air?" I stared at the text, wondering what kind of apology it was. Ruth was never really good at owning up to anything. She always deflected, always made it about everyone else. I knew she wasn't really sorry for what she had done, she was just sorry that things hadn't gone the way she planned. She was sorry that she hadn't controlled the narrative like she usually did. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to think. Part of me wanted to give her a chance to explain herself, but another part of me wanted to tell her exactly how much she had hurt me. I wasn't sure what the right answer was. As I sat there, weighing my options, I realized something. This wasn't just about a dinner or a moment of humiliation. This was about years of frustration, of feeling invisible and constantly compared to someone who was never really my sister, but more of an idealized version of what everyone thought a sister should be. I had tried so hard to be good enough in my parents' eyes, in the church's eyes, in the community's eyes. But what about me? When would I get to decide who I was and how I wanted to live my life? I took a deep breath and typed a response to Ruth. "I don't think we can clear the air tonight. I need some space to think about all of this." I hit send before I could change my mind, then put my phone down and leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't sure what the future held for Ruth and me, but I knew this: I was no longer going to let her define who I was. Not anymore. The next few days after the dinner felt like I was living in a fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed, but I wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. I was still angry at Ruth, still hurt by the things she'd said. But a part of me was starting to realize something: maybe this was the wake-up call I needed. Maybe this was the moment where I could stop allowing my sister, or anyone for that matter, to walk all over me. Ruth didn't message me again after that night. She was probably used to being the one in control, the one everyone scrambled to please. But I wasn't going to give her that power anymore. That had been part of the problem all along. I let her control the narrative, let her make me feel small. And I wasn't going to do that anymore. It was funny how, for years, I had been the one who felt like the outsider in my own family. I had tried so hard to live up to their expectations, to be what they wanted me to be. But no matter how much I tried, I was always falling short in their eyes. That night, when Ruth had tried to tear me down in front of everyone, something in me snapped. I realized I didn't need their validation. I didn't need Ruth's approval. And most importantly, I didn't need to live in her shadow anymore. So, I took action. I didn't wait for her apology. I didn't need one. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, but I also wasn't going to stoop to her level. I wasn't going to play the petty game she wanted me to. Instead, I began to think of ways to expose Ruth for who she really was, not just to the people at the dinner, but to the rest of our family and the people she had manipulated for years. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of getting even. It was about giving people the truth, letting them see the side of Ruth that I had always known. The side she kept hidden behind a veil of charm and innocence. A week after the dinner, I ran into our mother at the grocery store. She was picking out some vegetables, humming softly to herself. I felt the familiar pang of disappointment in my chest, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to confront my mother about what had happened. "Mom," I said, as she picked up a bag of carrots. "Can we talk for a minute?" She turned to me with a smile, but it faltered when she saw my serious expression. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" I hesitated for a moment. I had always tried to protect my mom from the tension between Ruth and me, but it was becoming impossible to ignore anymore. "Mom, I'm not sure you fully understand what happened at my graduation dinner." Her face immediately shifted to one of concern. "What do you mean?" "It was a lovely evening. Everyone was so proud of you." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Ruth humiliated me in front of everyone. She told people that I slept my way through college." "That's not just a misunderstanding, Mom. That's a lie." Her eyes widened, her expression going from confusion to disbelief. "She said that? To everyone?" I nodded. "Yes. And it wasn't the first time she's tried to tear me down. For years, she's made me feel like I'm not good enough. Like I'll never measure up to her. I'm done with it. And I'm done pretending everything is okay." Mom looked down at her hands, her face softening with a mixture of guilt and regret. "Sarah, I didn't know. I've always tried to keep the peace." "Ruth, she's just trying to protect you, I think. She's always been a little too protective." "That's not protection, Mom. That's control. Ruth has always wanted to be in charge. She always wants to make me the bad guy. But I'm not the one who's wrong here." My mother didn't say anything for a while, just stood there, digesting what I had said. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in years, understanding. "I didn't know you felt that way. I never meant for you to feel like that. I'm sorry." And just like that, the weight I'd been carrying around for so long felt a little bit lighter. I wasn't sure if things would ever change with Ruth, but at least now I felt like my mom understood. Maybe that was enough. But the real turning point came a few days later, when I got an unexpected message. It was from one of the women who had been at the dinner, a woman named Judy, who I had barely spoken to but knew to be one of Ruth's closest church friends. "I'm so sorry about what happened at the dinner. I know this might be weird, but I've been thinking about what Ruth said. I just don't believe it. I've known you for a while, Sarah, and I've seen the way you work. You're not the type of person who would do something like that." My heart skipped a beat as I read the message. I wasn't sure how to respond at first, but then I realized, this was my chance. This was the moment where I could make sure Ruth's lies didn't spread any further. I could finally expose her for who she really was. I took a deep breath and typed back. "Thank you, Judy. I appreciate your support. But this is bigger than just what happened that night. Ruth has been doing this for years. She's been controlling everything, making me feel less than, all while pretending to be perfect. The truth is, she's not perfect. She's just really good at hiding her manipulative side." Judy responded almost immediately. "I had no idea. I've known Ruth for years, and I've always thought she was so sweet, but now that I think about it, she does tend to twist things around, doesn't she? I'm really sorry, Sarah. I'll make sure the people at the church know the truth. No one should be allowed to lie like that." And just like that, the first domino fell. Over the next few days, I reached out to a few other people who had been at the dinner, including some of Ruth's close friends and even some of our extended family. I didn't want to turn this into a public spectacle, but I also wasn't going to let Ruth get away with what she had done. Slowly, the word spread. People began questioning Ruth's version of events, and more people started to see her for what she really was, someone who was willing to tear down anyone in her path to maintain her own sense of superiority. Ruth tried to deny it. She texted me once, claiming that I was just spreading lies and that I was trying to ruin her reputation. But by that point, the damage had already been done. People were beginning to see through her act. They were starting to realize that she wasn't the perfect, saintly figure she portrayed herself to be. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from the weight of her expectations, free from the need to be her version of perfect, and free from the constant manipulation. A month later, Ruth tried to make amends, sort of. She called me one evening, her voice shakier than I had ever heard it before. I'm sorry for everything. For the way I treated you. I don't know why I did it. I guess I was just so scared of losing control. I didn't respond immediately. I was silent for a long time, letting her words hang in the air between us. And then, finally, I spoke. I'm sorry too, Ruth. I'm sorry that we got here. But I can't keep pretending like everything is fine. I can't keep letting you hurt me. There was a long pause. I could hear her breath catch on the other end. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm done, I said, my voice steady. I don't need you in my life if all you're going to do is bring me down. And for the first time, I meant it. I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. Ruth might not have gotten what she wanted, but I had finally gotten what I needed, a chance to reclaim my own life.